You've probably been hearing a lot in the news recently about the Heritage Foundation's dangerous Project 2025, but what exactly is it? What will it mean for you, the voters? What impact will it have on American democracy, voting, and elections? I'm Sophie Feldman, and I'm joined here today with Democracy Docket's senior staff writer, Matt Cohen, who has reported extensively about this far right agenda. Matt, thanks for joining us. Can you give us just a brief rundown first about what Project 2025 actually is for those in our audience who might not be aware yet?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Sophie. So basically, Project 2025 is this massive, sprawling document from the Heritage Foundation that essentially is a blueprint for how to remake the federal government when the next conservative administration takes over into a sort of Christian nationalist authoritarian regime. The actual document it's almost 1,000 pages long, and it kind of reads like a conservative manifesto, and it basically details how every department, the changes that it can make to align with a government that is essentially dictated by Christian nationalist ideals.
Numerous civil rights organizations, voters, media outlets, just people on the streets are reading up about Project 2025 and are ringing serious alarm bells on it. Among other radical proposed changes that are laid out in Project 2025, they want to ban abortion nationwide, eradicate civil protections for millions of Americans, and also completely eliminate the Department of Education. But there's also numerous chapters about voting and elections and stuff that would just drastically change American democracy. One of the more concerning chapters that you laid out in one of your pieces that you wrote about Project 2025 on Democracy Docket is about serious reforms to the United States Department of Justice. Can you talk about who authored that chapter, first of all, and what these policies changes are?
Yeah, the chapter on the DOJ was written by Gene Hamilton, who is someone that might ring some familiarity for people. He's a prominent conservative lawyer who actually served in the DOJ and Department of Homeland Security under Trump. And the reason people might recognize that name is because he is kind of widely considered known as the chief architect of ending Trump's DACA program. And that is kind of his like rise to prominence within MAGA world.
Which, by the way, let me jump in here. This is one of numerous people who are architects of this dangerous Project 2025 who worked or are affiliated with Donald Trump, who we will talk about this more later, Matt. But Trump has now tried to distance himself from Project 2025, saying that he knows nothing about this agenda and he doesn't know any of the people who are part of it. But we'll debunk that obvious myth later in this video.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about this chapter about the DOJ that Gene Hamilton authored, it essentially wants to strip DOJ of its independent authority. Basically, the DOJ is tasked at having independent authority to investigate all matters of civil rights violations and other federal law violations, and it's widely seen as not being the arm of a president's agenda, but having its own agenda of upholding the Constitution and law. And the chapter on the DOJ also, it recommends completely stripping the DOJ of its civil rights division, which is a major function of the agency. It's responsible for enforcing critical voting right laws like the VRA, the National Voter Registration Act. Hamilton also writes extensively about how to reform the FBI and spends a lot of words writing about basically stripping of its duties to I think the actual quote is stripping it from engaging in activities related to combating the spread of so-called misinformation and disinformation by Americans who are not tied to any plausible criminal activity. So, you know, basically telling it to stand down from investigating misinformation that seeds into elections and can really seriously harm democracy in that way.
And this is especially even more deeply concerning as the threats against election workers across the country are on the rise as a result of this type of election mis and disinformation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the more you read into it, the the more alarming it really is, especially where we are in this election season, how kind of disinformation and misinformation is really um, running rampant.
On the topic of election threats, there's also a part of Project 2025 that talks about dismantling a key agency in the Department of Homeland Security. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is in a chapter about DHS. It was written by Ken Cuccinelli, who might be familiar to some people out there. He was a key figure in the Trump administration, working within the DHS. But he authored this proposal in the DHS chapter to almost completely kind of get rid of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, known as CISA, and move it to the Department of Transportation. And that is really alarming for a lot of reasons, but chief among them is that CISA is one of the primary agencies that is basically protecting federal and state elections from cybersecurity threats in elections, and that looks like foreign-backed disinformation, AI threats, things like that. It's hard to understate how critical of a role CISA plays in helping keep elections safe. In the past couple elections, they provide guidance and funding grants to help kind of local election offices fight different cyber threats and disinformation campaigns in elections. And their efforts have been praised by secretaries of state across the political spectrum, that basically, you know, how essential it is in helping keep elections safe. So to move that to the Department of Transportation, which has really no function of countering cybersecurity threats, is really alarming.
So, the architects of Project 2025 want to move this crucial cybersecurity threats agency to the Department of Transportation. I read in your piece on Democracy Docket that you talked to several different experts about this specific section. What were those experts saying about this?
Yeah, I think the one person that really summed up that proposal perfectly is Adav Nodi, who's the executive director of the Campaign Legal Center, a nonpartisan voting rights advocacy organization. And when I brought it up to him, he just told me that the proposal is absolutely bonkers. And he expanded on that and said that, it would really have devastating impact on election security. CISA is really like the bread and butter of DHS, and it's really a key agency for protecting the nation from different cyber threats, which really come out in elections mostly. So, moving that to the Department of Transportation, kind of stripping it of its role in elections, would really be devastating.
Another concerning part of Project 2025 that has been gaining a lot of traction in the media is the proposal to add a citizenship question on the US Census. We know that was one of the big defeats with the Trump administration as the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration from adding this citizenship question to the US Census in 2020. Can you talk about what exactly Project 2025 wants to do and why voters should be concerned about this?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because for a 1,000-page document that really gets into detail about a lot of things, it really doesn't get into detail about the citizenship question. It just says any successful conservative administration must include a citizenship question in the census. Um, and basically, this is a long time kind of right wing goal for the Republicans to get a citizenship question on the census, which it hasn't had since 1950. And as you mentioned, the Trump administration tried and failed. SCOTUS stepped in and said basically it's unconstitutional to do that. But such a simple ask has such like dangerous repercussions. Basically, the census is about counting the whole of the US population and not just American citizens. And what that data is used for is, you know, getting accurate population counts in communities, then translates to representation in Congress, different funding for communities and resources for communities. And if there's not an accurate count for those areas, it would really affect the kinds of resources that go to a lot of immigrant communities throughout the United States. They won't have that could lead to less representation in Congress. A depressed response rate really just has devastating impacts. And the other thing is a cultural concern that a lot of people I talk to brought up to me, which is it will just continue to inflame kind of anti-immigrant sentiment, which is a proponent of Trump's campaign, and the Republican base is really stoking fears about immigration and creating a really terrible anti-immigrant bias in this country.
We've been talking about a lot of Project 2025's dangerous proposals that are so radical that even Trump himself has tried to distance himself from Project 2025. He claimed on Truth Social that he knows nothing about Project 2025, nor has any idea who's behind it. What is your response to that, Matt?
I mean, that's just one of the biggest lies that he could have, he's, I mean, Trump is known for lying, but that is just one of the most blatant lies that he's told recently. The Heritage Foundation is so kind of intertwined with Trump's rise. He is very close with their president. At a 2022 event, he praised the Heritage Foundation, calling it a great group, and said that they're laying the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what the MAGA movement will do. So, I find it hard to believe that he has no knowledge of this, especially considering how many of his sycophants are behind it. CNN reported that there's at least 140 former members of Trump's administration who were in some way involved in it, whether that's, being listed in the credits of it, being tied to an organization who had some hand in it, or authoring chapters of it itself, like Peter Navarro and Ken Cuccinelli and Gene Hamilton. There's just really no way that he has no idea about it. That just seems like complete bull.
Let's make it clear to our audience. While it is true that Donald Trump's actual campaign is not the one who is behind Project 2025, numerous of his staff, previous staff, a lot of the people that he is connected to are behind this dangerous agenda to install, like you said, Matt, essentially a Christian nationalist portrait of America. Does any part of you at all think that Trump will not implement or use Project 2025 as a guide of what to do if he takes office again next year?
Look, I mean, the likelihood that every detail in Project 2025 would come to fruition is pretty low. There's so much in there, and it's frankly, I don't know that legally he or any president could do all of that. But the fact of the matter is that if even 10% of what's in Project 2025 comes to fruition, that will have devastating impacts for millions of Americans. There's not a idea, proposal in there that's not going to affect millions of people. And so even if there is just a minimal amount of what's in there that comes to effect, that is extremely concerning.
So I'm sure that is very scary for a lot of our audience to hear. But the good news is that we will keep reporting about all of these things so that everyone will stay informed about these threats to our democracy, especially you, Matt. We have some exciting news that we'll talk about right here. I hear that you are launching a new newsletter at Democracy Docket to talk specifically about what the Republicans and the right wing is up to with their threats to elections and American democracy. It's called Eye on the Right. Can you talk a little bit about that newsletter, what people can expect, how people can sign up when it launches?
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I'm really excited about it. It launches on July 23rd, and it basically is going to go deep on the reporting that I do for Democracy Docket already. All of the kind of right wing people, groups, and trends that I'm digging into, that all lives rent free in my brain. And we thought it would be a good idea to kind of do this newsletter to provide a little more analysis on like what all of these right wing groups and trends mean in the political world. So expect to hear a little bit more about groups like America First Legal or the United Sovereign Americans, and just kind of me talking a little bit more about what that all means, especially in this election season and beyond, and kind of what people should be keeping their eye on, who they should be concerned about, things like that. It's launching July 23rd, as I said, and you could sign up for it on Democracy Docket's website. And yeah, I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, we're really excited for this to be launching. I think it's something that is really important for our viewers, but also just the public to be aware about all of these threats and keep an eye on the right, as we say, as the newsletter title suggests. Keeping up with what they're doing is something that is really important. So, like Matt said, you can sign up at democracydocket.com, or you can just click the link right here on the screen or in the description of this video. The first edition launches tomorrow, July 23rd. So, sign up right now to receive that straight to your inbox tomorrow morning. And if you want to support our work, consider becoming a Democracy Docket member. You can upgrade right now for just $10 a month or $120 a year. You get exclusive new newsletters, access to live events, some more newsletters from Mark, etc. And it really helps support our work. So you can click the link again right here or in the description of this video. All right, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on the Democracy Docket YouTube channel.
Sophie, thank you so much for having me. This is super fun.